unofficial expert room. Plus, on room as people know more. The ID number again? It is. All right. 867 9201. That was a missed opportunity. 920-8542. And public. You have to remember the name. You can actually type your name there, right? Type just bomb. Will show up. You don't have to remember the name, and then you actually wanted to connect. Do not connect audio. It's going to be through the chamber audio.
So you should be able to turn on your camera. Let's see. It doesn't have a turn on or off camera, Chris.
Nope.
Oh, he hasn't been.
You have to promote him.
Oh.
Promote you to panelist.
Right now.
Senator Lakey, thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, just Todd's fine. But glad to be here.
All right, now you can start your video down.
All righty. There it is. Ooh. Okay, do we have to? We can change that. We can change anything about the.
Start your recording, Steve. Will you promote Steve 7? Yep.
Hey, our fifth commissioner joined. I think we've hit quorum level now.
I believe so. I'll let Steve get to his spot and we'll gavel in.
It's always a nervous time right before we get 5.
Right?
Right.
Alrighty, it is 5:32 on Wednesday, July 8th. I would like to call to order the 7th regular meeting of the Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission. I'd love to get this started with a roll call. Rachel, if you are present, would you please call the roll?
Rachel is out tonight, so that's why you get me.
Alrighty.
So we will do my best.
Wonderful. Well, Steve, if you'd be so kind to call the roll.
Okay. Dom Gelsomino.
Present.
Joe Keith Bevan.
Present.
Jennifer Lopez.
Present.
Abby Hudson is absent. Michelle Jensen.
Present.
John Nesbitt is absent. Craig Steele is absent. Jessica West.
I'm present. When you lean down, I think it cuts out your voice a little bit, just so you know.
When I lean down or when I...
Yeah.
So is this better?
That's worse.
No, this is better.
Yep.
Wonderful.
All right. So we have 2, 3, 4, 5 commissioners present. We do have a quorum.
So,
Thank you so much, Steve. Our next item of business, adoption of the...
Sorry, I did not call Brad Hoagland.
Oh.
I'm present.
Thank you. Sorry, I know I'm a poor substitute.
We want Rachel back.
That is quite all right. Thank you, Steve. We
Me
appreciate you. Our next item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion for the adoption of tonight's agenda?
okay, Mr. President, I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as is.
Mr. President,
Motion
I
has been
second.
made by Commissioner West and seconded by Commissioner Jensen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. Next item, approval of the minutes from our June 10th, 2020 special meeting, our Spring Pathways Tour. Do we have a motion for the approval of last month's minutes?
So, Mr. President, I'll make a motion for the approval of last month's meeting minutes.
Motion has been made. Is there a second?
Mr. President, I second that motion.
Commissioner Jensen has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. Our next item is announcements, upcoming events from Shelley Houston, our Meridian Parks and Recs marketing coordinator. Shelley, take it away.
Mr. President, this is Steve. I gave Shelley the night off and told her I would cover this for her because there isn't much of an update because of the current Central District Health order, which restricts gatherings to less than 50. The reality is all of our special events are designed to gather much more than that. So at the current time, due to the COVID-19 crisis, we have postponed current events until we get back to stage 4 or beyond. So there is no additional update for those items at this time.
Thank you so much, Steve.
You know, maybe I would just quickly will note on the topic of events, there was a very nice small event held today as hosted by Audrey from our department. It's actually part of the Arts Commission, but an unveiling of the new firefighter statue at the new fire station on Overland. So that was held today, went very well, I understand, and just wanted to let people know that.
Thank you so much, Steve. I did watch the live stream on Facebook and saw the pictures of the statue. The commemoration was beautiful, and the statue is definitely something to admire and go check out. We are joined also by Commissioner Steele, just for the record. Commissioner Steele, welcome. We do have some old business. We have as old business an update from Cameron Ariel, the Meridian Community Development Director, regarding the Meridian Open Space Survey update. Cameron, if you are joining us, the floor is yours.
Oh, welcome, Commission. It's good to be with you this evening. I just this open space survey has been a little bit in the making. Obviously, we had COVID hit during the midst of it, but we're glad to have the results back and be able to report on those to you this evening. Steve, if you can pull up my presentation, I'll just
Yep,
walk.
I am working on it. Chris, my cursor disappears whenever I go over the. And then share screen, and go here, share. Okay, I think, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, fantastic. We'll just dive right in here. So as you guys know, this was a result of a lot of feedback, not only from elected officials that certainly have opinions on the topic, but also throughout our comprehensive plan process that was nearly a 2-year process. This was a topic that came up over and over again. It also stems way back to our previous strategic plan that actually even predates me. But open space has been, been a topic for Meridian for quite some time. In that strategic plan, I believe it's item 1C3, if any of you care to look that up, but it basically puts forward the idea of really diving into the topic of what is open space. And so from that kind of base question, we realized, throughout the process that open space means a lot of different things to everyone. And in order for the city to even have a meaningful footing to understand what to do about this issue, we really needed to pull our people to understand, at least get some understanding of what open space means to them, and then also how they prioritize it. And then I think a third basic question is what to do about it. The reality is we would all love more open space. Of course, the quandary there is you have to procure it in some way in order to control it. And so in the survey, we kind of get at the heart of all these questions. So we'll kind of dive in and go from there. So Steve, if you wouldn't mind advancing that slide. Okay, so high level, we ran the survey for a month. We felt like we wanted to leave it open for as long as was meaningful. It is important to note that this was kind of in the height of COVID. So I don't know, you got to kind of take that as a reality. Did that sway the votes or not? I'm not sure. But there's no question we were seeing a lot more people out and about during this time, using open space, using parks, at least those that they could access meaningfully. And so just know that we opened it for that period of time. We did get over 1,500 respondents, which in my view far exceeded our goal. Our goal was to get about 1,000. So we felt like if we got in that range, we could, that's a meaningful number, and we could, feel comfortable reporting on that. It is important to note that we did kind of screen. One of the questions was a demographic question of age. So we did limit that to basically voting age, 18 plus in the community. But it is important to note that we got very few responses in the lower ages there. So from that, some of the key findings. I do need to step back just real quickly. We did do this in partnership with the Boise State School of Public Service and their Idaho Policy Institute. So really it is the research arm of Boise State to kind of dive that looks at all kinds of issues like this and does surveys like this all over. I'm sure many of you have seen some of their statewide surveys. They've done transportation surveys, what have you. So just know that this isn't certainly, we helped craft this, but they also helped us put together the model, do the research, and then also report the research. So hopefully that adds a level of credibility there. So some of the key findings. So this kind of second indentation here, it was clear from the results that people care about open space. That was good to confirm. We kind of knew that anecdotally from some of our conversations through the comp plan and otherwise, but overwhelmingly open space is valued by Meridianites. That being said, when we start to drill down, we really start to understand what they value. This one of the questions was a ranking question, and so we basically had them rank these types of open space. And you can see here the number of first place rankings that each type received. So I found this somewhat interesting. You have a nature reserve. So in essence, just raw ground left as it is. We gave some examples of what that may look like. Steve did some research there on each of these topics. And we kind of plugged that in there. Was the number one vote getter, if that makes sense. Then we had public parks, multi-purpose outdoor urban space, pathways, working farm and dairy operations, and historical cultural significant properties. So that just gives you a quick rundown on those first place rankings. What this doesn't show, and we could dive into that too, is the second and third and fourth rankings. What I can tell you there is that parks and pathways were consistently in the top rankings. So 2 or 3, or vice versa. Those were very common, and you'll see that in the next slide here. So Steve, if you want to advance that. So when we start asking specifically about these types of open space and a citizen's willingness to purchase property for that type of open space, I think it was more of a, okay, this is a real, rubber hits the road. Yeah, I like this stuff, but am I willing to pay for it? Was kind of the tie here. What you find is that public parks received the highest support at 82%. So if you're going to go purchase it, parks was the highest. Then on down here, nature preserve, pathways. What we did see is that there's kind of this dividing line, if you will, between those three and then the other three here of, farming operations, historical or cultural significant properties, or, multi-purpose outdoor urban space. So it started to you kind of see this, yeah, we really value our public parks and pathways and open space, nature preserve. That being said, all of them received over a majority. So again, that kind of highlights not only do people support, value open spaces, but a majority of those consistently value all of them. But there is that kind of dividing line there. And then kind of the last thing to note there, oh, sorry, Steve, yep, there we go. When we ask basically, how would you prefer to pay for them? The highest, and that was that was a ranking question. 48% of the respondents preferred that they be paid for via development impact fees. The second was the use of city fund balance, and then the third was a public vote. So thought that was interesting when we put that that funding tool or funding mechanism question there, what came back. So next slide. So just some other quick kind of cross tabulation information. So 66% of the respondents were female, 31% male. So I found that interesting. 67% were in that 25 to 54 age bracket, and 71% of them had bachelor's degrees or higher. So indicative of some demographics that we already kind of knew, which is that Meridian is one of the highest and most educated populaces in the state. And then when we kind of overlay some housing demographic, 90% of them own their own single family home. So just kind of, that is your kind of a indication of the sampling. So next slide. So this was important. So Boise State, the tool that we used, it's called Qualtrics. It's able to use geocoding. So basically wherever a respondent's IP address is, you can geocode them. So they remain anonymous, but we're able to say where they are, where they took it. Obviously, you can see here, we did screen out everyone that responded that was not a Meridianite. So obviously we're assuming people are honest, but you do see here that there are a few dots that are outside of Meridian. That basically just means that they either purchased their phone or they have their server housed outside of Meridian. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not a Meridianite, but just wanted to kind of explain that slide a little bit. But what you do see there is that there's a overconcentration of responses in the north. Found that to be interesting. We thought we would maybe see a little bit difference there, but somewhat indicative of the populace. Next slide. Okay, so now when we really start to get into the crosstabs of the survey, we see we wanted to understand if there was a difference from folks that have been here in Meridian a short time and a longer time. And really what we find is that the longer a respondent had lived in Meridian, the less likely they were to support. And it wasn't by much. All demographics still had a strong support for open space. It's important to remember that kind of overarching result. But what we did see is that those that were kind of newer, 3 to 4 years, had the highest support range at 84%. And then lower once we got beyond that, 78%. So somewhat interesting crosstab there. As far as age goes on this, again, the strongest support came and peaked at the 25 to 34 range. So basically, folks that are out active, use them quite a bit, use open space, they certainly value it. So not necessarily a big surprise there. And then we did see the highest support in the education crosstab with the bachelor's range of folks. So educated folks value their open space. Next slide. Okay, so when we start talking about parks in particular, we find a couple things. So in the length of time, again, kind of that 3 to 4 range, very high, 88% supported. And then in age, somewhat similar there, but it was a higher peak at 91% of those 25 to 34s really support that. And then it started to go down a bit there, but still strong support. And then education, strong support essentially across the demographics. But then when the housing crosstab was interesting here. The rental folks actually really value parks. And I think that goes, somewhat intuitive. If I don't have a yard, if I don't have a neighborhood that has a meaningful park nearby or what have you, parks mean a lot to me. So not a surprise, but again, 90% support in that demographic. Nature preserve. So again, 79% supported the purchase for nature preserve. Length of time, again, strong support came in those that were here a shorter time, and then it kind of waned a little bit, but still very high at 78%, even in the longer demographic there. Our younger crowds really value just open, raw earth, 94% of them. And then that tended to wane as they got older, 67%. They're in the 75 or older crosstab. Let's see, and then next slide. Pathways. So again, somewhat similar here, the 3 to 4 range, strongest support, waned just a bit as it got older, but still again, strong support across that. Our younger crowd, again, supported pathways the highest at 88%. And then again, single family rental. So these are folks that rent their single family home, were the peak at 82% on pathways. Next slide. And then the funding question. So when we broke that down across those crosstabs, again, the highest support came to development impact fees. The peak was in the lower time it spent in Meridian, and it kind of definitely waned to 35% the longer folks were involved at 10 years or greater. The 45 to 54-year-old range was the highest, around 55% there. And then doctoral degrees tended to be the highest educational support for development impact fees at 68%. And then multifamily and multifamily own and rent supported this the highest on the housing crosstab. So kind of in conclusion, again, of those surveyed, so again, this isn't, we can't make the broad statement that all Meridianites believe this, but we can say of those that were surveyed, they definitely value open space. That was abundantly clear in the results. They particularly value nature reserve, parks, and pathways, and are willing to pay for them. So I think that was an interesting find. And then the means by which to pay for them was, again, highest support came by development impact fees. So with that, that's kind of the end of our presentation, and certainly would love to get your feedback on that. I think it is important to note that we will be presenting these results to the City Council as well, and would be happy to pass along any thoughts or what have you regarding this from this commission. Certainly we've got Councilman Hoagland on, but would love to get your feedback on what you just heard.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Do we have any questions from the commission?
Mr. Ariel, I have a question, if Mr. President, you okay with that?
Yes, Commissioner West.
What are the next steps? So you're presenting the responses to City Council, but what's the proposed actions to be taken based on this information? Or are you asking for their response first?
Sure, Mr. Chairman and Commissioner West, great question. That really is, we didn't want to go into this survey with any kind of presupposed action. We wanted to kind of have the results kind of speak to that, and then essentially, however you all and the council wanted to move forward with anything. So at this point, we are presenting the data, and the data somewhat speaks for itself, but we didn't want to suppose any form of action at this time. But that being said, the practical side is we will present this, and I think the results, you know, it would, it's hard to not do something with these results in my view.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any further questions from the commission?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
as the Parks Director, my takeaway is, you know, build more parks and pathways and try to use impact fees where possible. So I think there's a pretty strong message there of support for future park land, as well as acquiring land, places for pathways to be as well. So that's a wonderful result to hear based on our goals.
Thank you so much, Steve. I agree. Cameron, one question from myself is because this is becoming an issue that is near and dear to my heart when it comes to environmental stewardship, and I noticed that the nature preserve was the highest ranked. So can you elaborate a little bit further into the description of the nature preserve, and then as a follow-up, does this give us a little bit more breathing room, being that it has been ranked so high by our community members, to start investing more in and looking more toward the planting of more indigenous and more pollinator plants throughout our parks and recreation areas, through these nature preserves? You know, would it allow for that little bit more breathing room to where, you know, yes, maybe these pollinator plants, these indigenous plants, I'm not entirely sure if what the expenditure is, but if there's an expenditure difference between those and more typical common shrubs and greenery that are currently planted in parks and recreation areas, does this change that dynamic?
Good question, Mr. Chairman. Let me just kind of, I think I'll just step back and give you basically verbatim how this was described. So nature preserve was described as undeveloped land, natural scenery, rural ag ground. So it's, and then Steve used the, he found a great example in an actual nature center in Ogden, Utah, that we actually included in the survey. So if someone was curious, what do they mean by nature, you know, preserve? They could actually see something, you know, that would look like that. So, you know, when I think of undeveloped land, it's basically just that, you know, it's an open field that's just left to be what it is, or it could be something more that's in line with what Ogden, Utah does, which is, you know, it's procured ground that, yes, it's left open, but you can walk through it. There's a pathway through it. There, you know, it does include, you know, native foliage, you know, flora, fauna. You know, it has wetlands, what have you. So there's still, even within nature preserve, I think there's still it's still somewhat undefined or you know, left for interpretation. But that being said, you know, when I looked back at the results, you know, it was maybe 1 or 2 percentage points off of parks and pathways. So it's not like this was, yeah, that was definitively the #1 thing. But those top 3 were definitely up there. So as far as what types of plants and, you know, what have you to be included in there, we certainly did not go that deep.
Understood. Thank you so much, Cameron. Are there any further questions from the commission? Hearing none. Cameron, thank you so much for your update today. We are looking forward to seeing the next steps and the implementation of what we've learned from our community members and our neighbors and our family and our friends.
Sure, my pleasure. It was good to be with you on this topic, but I'll certainly hang around for the next agenda item.
Thank you, Cameron. Our next item is our Civic Block Community Center update that falls under our new business items. And that will be Galena team.
You actually start with me, Mr. President.
All right. Well, we'll start with Director Sidaway.
All right. I think everyone can see the screen. So I just wanted to kick this off by saying that we've been looking forward for a long time to give the commission an update on the Civic Block, which is the block where the community center project is planned. And even though we do not have refined or pretty pictures to show tonight, there's been enough progress with things that have been happening related to the urban renewal district and other efforts that it was timely, I think, to come forward with an update as to where things are tonight. There will be future updates that'll be more focused on the community center itself. But we wanted to come tonight as a team with the planning department, MDC, the Galena team, and ourselves, just to talk about where we've been over the last 8 to 10 months and since the RFP went out, and bring you an update so that you're fully up to speed as to where things are. With that as an introduction, I'm going to turn the time over to Cameron Ariel, who you were just hearing from, the planning director, and then we'll actually let him speak and then go from there. So I'll go to the next slide, Cameron, and you can take over.
Sure, excellent. Thanks again, Commission. Good to be with you. Certainly exciting times in our downtown, and in regards to the Civic Block and the Community Center, we're very pleased with the progress and excited to report, just as Steve said, to you this evening. So what you see here, we just thought it would be good to give you a bird's eye view of kind of the area that we're talking about. And just kind of point out a few things. I'm going to just step back a bit and give you a little historical context that will help kind of feed into kind of the here and now. So, as many of you know, the downtown has been a focus for many years. Certainly, Councilman Hoagland can attest to that. It's been, Mayor Tammy, and certainly this Mayor Simonsen's administration have all prioritized the downtown. And so, we have been looking at this area of downtown and really trying to understand how to best revitalize our downtown for a number of years. And we're starting to see some of this redevelopment occur. And it's created a number of different opportunities. One of them being this Civic Block and Community Center proposition. So, I just want to point that out, that this isn't just a year's time. This is, tens, 20, decades of time that focus and work has been put into the downtown. And I think even Steve himself, the Lord of Downtown, may be able to talk a little bit to his work and efforts in this regard. So that being said, I guess it's been, hopefully you saw in your packet, there was a kind of a detailed timeline. Our Economic Development Administrator, Tori Cleary, put that timeline together that kind of talks through, when things have occurred. But we wanted to kind of bring you a little bit current with the issuance of the RFP for development services that went out in last August. That was a process.
Cameron, I just put up the timeline. Did you want that up at this
Perfect.
point?
Yep, that's great. Thank you. So just, you can see here, this kind of just outlines a lot of the work that myself, Steve, our combined departments, certainly MDC was a huge part of that in partnership with them. So Todd and Ashley, a lot of people working in concert to move these initiatives forward. So that RFP was issued. We got a response back from the Galena Fund. We have representatives on tonight, and they will present just briefly. That proposal was accepted with contingencies, and if needed, that was in your packet as well. We can talk through those, but we were able to forge a good, meaningful partnership with the Galena Fund. A main catalyst and I would call linchpin to this whole redevelopment process was the establishment of the Union District urban renewal area. That was a major process, and following of state statute, noticing there was a eligibility report that was put forward by consultants to make sure that we complied with the code, and essentially a whole series of hearings that had to occur to establish that new urban renewal district. It also entailed the de-annexation of those properties from the existing district. We can get into the details of all of that if you'd like, but high level, that enables us to capture the tax revenue, the incremental tax value from Galena's Union District development, and channel that toward public, public benefit, public uses on the civic block. And of course, that's a important variable, an important thing to note, because that enables us to do all kinds of things, support parking, on-site, potentially utility upgrades and movement of utilities, street, curb, gutter, lighting, all of those things that are necessary for this development to occur. So again, that was a major undertaking, costly. Fortunately, that was all done by our partners at Galena, and that has been done and completed. And so to Steve's point, that was a major step, and we wanted to kind of at least point that out to you all. Then from there, we're now kind of into the discussion of, okay, now that we have funding identified, mechanisms in place, we also have other things in the works. For example, the programming of the community center itself, the business model by which it'll operate, and to Steve's point, that'll come as we finalize those things and to get your all input into that. But all that to be said, we continue to move forward meaningfully with this project. With that said, I think hopefully that covered the MDC portion as well. I may just open it up if there's anything I'm missing there for Todd. But again, just major processes and milestones that have been completed, and we continue to move forward meaningfully with the project. So with that, I'll kick it back to Steve, unless Todd has more to add.
I'll just pause and ask Todd, he's with MDC, if you have anything more that you would add on behalf of MDC at this point?
Mr. Chairman, no, I think that was well covered, Cameron. It's been a good partnership, and it's groundbreaking, and it'll be a game changer downtown.
All right, thank you. So I think with that, we will turn the time over to Galena, and I think we have Mike Chittister. And I don't know, Mike, if you want just the site plan up first, maybe. You just tell me what slide you'd like up, and I'll switch it.
Sure, we can start with the site plan. First, just wanted to say thanks for letting us be a part of your meeting tonight. Aaron Elton is also here from the Galena team, and wanted to let you know he's there, and maybe he'll be chiming in later. We do want to reiterate what was just said, that the linchpin of this, of our vision for being able to have the community center executed is the tax increment financing, essentially taxing the project, the Union 93 project, to be able to pay for some of the improvements needed for the community center. And that it is no small feat. It was a heavy lift, and Cameron and Steve and certainly Todd with MDC and Ashley Squires and a lot of people put in a lot of work to make that happen. It had the support of planning and zoning and council, and so we just want to say that that was important and was consistent work really from January through June. And so we appreciated teaming with MDC and the city to do that, but we this couldn't have been done without the focus of a lot of folks. So thank you. We mean that sincerely. We were asked to, so why don't we look at, so that's showing you the urban renewal district in and of itself. Our project is in the south, 2/3 of what you see there highlighted in red, with the civic block there at the north part. Yeah, that's where the Union 93 project was, and we were asked to give an update on that project so you'd understand what it is. So why don't we go to that slide, Steve, and we'll hit some of the high points of that project, and then we'll certainly open for questions. So this project, Union 93, is a housing project. We have been working on acquiring the land, and others have been working on acquiring the land for quite some time. It's a complicated ownership structure, but we believe we'll be closing on that land later in August. And that in and of itself will be a huge milestone and will allow some flexibility for things to move forward. The project in and of itself, high level, the first phase will be housing. 330 approximately units. That may increase or decrease slightly, but not in a material way. About 330 multifamily units, 550 parking stalls in structures beneath each of the two buildings you see there. And then also there will be on the north side of the property facing Broadway, be approximately 20,000 square feet of retail space that we hope will activate the site. Future, that's the first phase, and that first phase will take we'll hope to be in the ground in the spring, and also finishing within about 24 months from now. Future phase is, you don't see it here because there aren't renderings yet, but the future phase is some office development. So on the west side of the project, office development. Exactly how much that office that is to be determined. Our vision is, probably about 200,000 square feet. Aaron and I like to err on the side of being cautious and conservative. Would probably say 100 to 200,000. Others in our team would probably go north of that. But we have been partnering with an office developer in the valley to partner on that, and we do think there's a good opportunity for office in that location, and that will be kicked off in the future. It won't trail too much the project here, but probably I would say a year or two following the completion of the housing would we see the office come online. If you go to the next slide, Steve. This is a high-level site plan. This is very high level. It's not beautiful, but it will give you a general idea of the orientation of the project. On the west side there, there's going to be a temporary parking lot before the office becomes available. That'll allow parking that's displaced during construction, and so for some period of time there will be that parking on the west side of the lot. You see the west and east buildings. Those will have the 330 units and the parking stalls, and then also. We do want to say that we're going to spend. This is very high level, and we now in about the next, once the land is closed, and we're finalizing our construction method. We'll be designing this further, but we will have some sort of central. You see that plaza area there. That we'll be spending a lot of time on that. That's not well developed by any means at this point. But that we've looked at pushing that further to the east, maybe to be adjacent to the civic block. It will most likely be there in the center, and we wanted that to be the case, I think, because we want each of the users of that space in all three, the office and the two multifamily spaces, to be able to have that space. That will be important for us, and we think it will. We also see Broadway, that intersection of Broadway and Second, and over to the east, maybe where we're looking at the community center could someday maybe be a festival street, or there are ways to tie these two blocks together. And I think our design team is trying to be intentional about that, to almost extend that plaza area over into the next block. The other thing that to the south of us, of course, is the Union Pacific rails. We will have an open area on the south part, which we hope someday will be part of the rails to trails system. But we will try and integrate from Broadway down to the south part of the lot to have some connection there. So so there will be good pedestrian access. Bikes, families, will be able to move through the site, have a nice, atmosphere to go through the site and connect. I think, to give you an idea on timing again, we'll close on the land in August. We hope in the early fall to be scraping buildings. If you go there right now, you'll see some old buildings, and we'll be looking at demolishing those in the coming months. And then I think, we may be moving even in the winter, but I could see early spring things moving in earnest. It's a 18 to 20 month time frame for full construction. So about 2 years from now, we hope to be very close or opening those facilities. Aaron, anything you want to add? That's the high level of the project in and of itself. Aaron, anything you'd want to add to that?
Nothing specific. I think as we move into the civic block, we can talk about how that kind of interplays. But as Mike mentioned, this is the first phase of multiple phases that will make this what we think is a fantastic project across from City Hall and be a real landmark for downtown.
I think I just would add, why is Galena interested in this? Part of it is personal. Aaron and his family are very, have been here for about 10 years and have put a lot into the community. This is where I live, and I recall the first Christmas we were here, we found the giant Christmas tree, and it was cool that we sort of felt like there was a place to come in downtown Meridian, and I think we see that as the civic block can become something that's a landmark. The community center in that area can be something that's a landmark. It will be good for, it will be good for our project as well. We think a new community center, and some other uses that we're looking at putting there can obviously have good interaction with our project and create a larger footprint, if you so to speak, for Union 93. So, Steve and Cameron, anything else? And we're open for questions as well.
No, I think I have up now the site plan for the civic block site. Mike, I wonder if you might just touch high level on some of the site constraints, like the Hunter lateral and things like that we've uncovered over our time we've been working together. Sure. We have like any nice square block that looks perfect for development. Once you get under the ground, the life gets much more complicated. One of the things we're working on right now is right through the center of the block. There is the Hunter lateral goes through there, and so we are looking at options for moving that to the east of the block to see if there's a way we can have more contiguous land. It's a 40-foot easement right down the middle. You can't put any structures over it, and even the non-structural things you want to put over it you're limited. And so we've been working with Nampa Meridian Irrigation and ACHD, the Highway District, to see options there. Those are two organizations that both have a lot of policies, rules, and history. And so it's not a simple thing, but we are working with that.
in order to try and move that to the east and get more contiguous space on the block. You know, if that does not happen, I don't think the project is, you know, we can still execute a great project. We can actually use that area for to create a sort of a plaza that meanders through the middle of the block. But it would be ideal if we had the whole block unimpeded to work with. So we're working on that. You know, the other thing that we're working toward is the vision of the city has always been that this not just have a community center, but it have multiple uses. It be a mixed use project. And so we continue to work on housing. We've exercised and will continue to exercise possibilities for office in addition to that. You know, otherwise the Compass and VRT building is a new building there. That parking lot will be able to move those, relocate those parking spaces to the structured parking at the Union 93 project. And so there is flexibility there. You know, that Compass VRT building will stay, but if I think they understand and have been good partners that if we're able to use that block as much as possible, that, you know, we'll be able to maximize the use of that space that currently is their parking lot. What else, Steve, would you like to say about this, our work right here?
That's probably good for now. We could maybe take over from here and turn some time over to Garrett to talk about the efforts related to the community center itself and some of the research we've been doing. You want to go ahead, Garrett?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Really, we was doing a lot of research and spent some time on other community centers and some comparables. Just here locally, we've toured Jump, the Nampa Civic Center, BSU Event Centers, and Barber Park, just to try to get a sense for some of the lessons learned that they have when they built their facilities or that they are having right now in their current capacities and what they like. On top of that, we had a plan to go down to Utah and tour some facilities, but that actually got changed since this COVID-19 stuff that happened. But we were able to virtually tour and ask questions to 3 different facilities down there right around Salt Lake City, and speak with their directors on, again, lessons learned, what programs they have to offer, what's their popular programs, those types of things, just to help us learn more of what we could be getting into, you know. So with that, that's kind of our quick update on that. We've just been doing some research on programming, like I said, in different facilities.
Thanks, Garrett. I think the only thing I would add is that, you know, we kicked off a design process early, but then that design process went on hold and has been on hold through the spring and so far through the summer. Notice that I'm not on camera. Can't figure out why. But we... during all of these efforts that you've heard about for the urban renewal district formation and things like that, it was necessary to do that first before we get too far into design. Because if there is no Galena project, if there is no tax increment financing, if there's no urban renewal district, then the efforts towards designing the facility would have been for naught. So we're actually doing well, even though we don't have any design pictures to show you that yet. I think that's a next step or a future phase. We've been focusing on all the things you've heard so far tonight, doing some research, and we'll be moving into that, which is kind of the fun part for us here soon. So with that, why don't I think we can stop, take questions from the commission. If there's questions for Galena, for Cameron, for us, be happy to take them.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your parts on this presentation. I'm very excited to see the progress on this project. Do we have any questions from the commission? Any commissioners have any questions regarding the community center and civic block project update?
President, I
So,
have a
Ms.
question.
Commissioner Bevan.
So on the proposed, design, it had on that, I guess, the west side, the parking, but it said something to the effect of City of Meridian temporary parking, and I'm just curious what that means. And, is that public parking or, you know, because you're gonna have retail, yeah, up there at the top.
Yeah, I meant to say that won't be there forever, I guess, is what I meant by that. The structured will, but it's intended to be there while we have while that is not being used for construction or a future phase.
Mr. President,
Yes.
if I might try and answer what I think you might be getting at, that parking would be temporary, but we do have other parking within the structure. So the parking, there would be community center designated parking, either on the community center site, TBD, and possibly in one or both of these buildings. And Mike, maybe I'll let you talk to that parking arrangement.
Sure. Yeah, we certainly are. You know, that's really the key to being able to do this was that we have parking available across the street within what I would consider a tolerable distance for, to be able to use the community center. To try and get parking and the community center on the same block would have been pretty difficult for to pull off. We are looking at, so the plan has always been to provide parking within the Union 93, and likely in that east building that you see on the screen now. There is a possibility we're looking at potentially bringing some of that over across the street along with some housing, and so there would be, we would get some parking for the community center on the civic block if that were to move forward. That's to be determined though right now. And some parking required for big events at the community center would still be required. It wouldn't be enough to park every big event that could happen at the community center, but for day-to-day parking, we would hope to have some on site if we're able to get another project there on the block. Does that answer the question, Steve?
Yeah, that was good, thank you.
Thank you so much. Are there any further questions from the commission?
Mr. President, this is Brad Hoagland. Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councilman Hoagland, please.
Great. Question for Mike. Good to see you, Mike. It's been a couple of years since our hospital days, but
yes, it has.
The Hunter Lateral, question about that. What's the time frame of knowing what you can do with that? Because that will certainly impact the design of the facility. So what do you have in mind for timing on that to know?
That is a great question. We are, so officially you have to go to get an answer. You do full design and then you bring a development project and then ACHD looks at it. And then with Nampa Meridian Irrigation, you have a fully engineered plan and then you take it to them and then their board determines if that's okay. Obviously we can't go that far and then find out, nope, you can't do it. So we have been working with staff at ACHD, who gave us some. We met with both of them early on. January, I believe it was early January. We met with both entities to try and understand it. Initially, our plan was probably just to live with it, or potentially to move the lateral on the site, but scoot it over to the west a little bit. More recently, we've thought, you might as well go for it, and so we've been in discussions with ACHD staff again, with commissioners. We've been in discussion with Nampa Meridian Irrigation, not with their board, but with the head person there. We're back speaking with ACHD to just find the legal structure to make it work. I would say we'll have a pretty firm answer within a month, and then we'll at least know there is a path forward, or it looks very unlikely that there is a path forward, and we'll choose to go from there. But really this has been going on for probably 6 to 8 weeks. I would say within 30 days, we'll get some more clarity. And at that point, but you're totally right. You've got to know that before you do too much more design. And so I think we're pretty close. We're working between the two entities, and we should have at least an idea of how possible it is within about 30 days, I would say.
Thank you, Mike, Mr. President. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Councilman Hoagland, Mike. Do we have any further questions from the commission? Hearing none. Mike, Aaron, gentlemen, thank you so much for your presentation today on the Civic Block and Community Center project. We're all looking forward to seeing the progress made over the next 2 years.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Maybe as a closing remark, I will just note that as a team, we have captured all of this update in a memo that I will send out after this meeting and make it part of these meeting minutes.
Thank you so much, Steve. All right. Our next item is going to be our Parks and Recs Department classes and camps update. Our recreation coordinator, Jenna Fletcher, joins us tonight. Jenna, the floor is yours.
Hi all, thank you for letting me be here. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes.
All right. Steve, do you have my presentation? I can share my screen. I have it also.
Oh, if you have it up, go
Yep.
ahead and share your screen and then you can click through it on your own. I believe you should have the ability to do that. There you go.
Okay. All right, so like they said, I'm Jenna Fletcher. I am the classes and camps coordinator. So I am in charge of all of our classes that we put out through our activity guide, plus all of our summer camps that we're currently running. So we'll just kind of start out and we'll be going through our 2019. We're currently in our 2020 summer. So you can just see our revenue history the past couple years. We've been increasing great amounts, obviously through 2018, 2019. We were able to add a third site in 2019. And so we definitely captured a lot more revenue there and then just continue to add in more classes that we can offer. This just breaks down our classes and then our camps. We offer 3 different camps during the summer: our outdoor adventure camp, our sports camp, and then our 3 different sites at our schools. And then obviously the majority of our revenue comes from those classes that we capture throughout the whole year. Again, just a little smaller breakdown of each different site. Willow Creek is our most popular site. Normally we max out at 50 kids. Last year we would have full days and half days and then would max out at 50 kids. Willow Creek usually had a waiting list, and then Discovery and Sienna, which is located over on the south side over there in Tuscany. So we try to hit schools at throughout the valley just so we can capture all those parents that are working within Meridian. So again, this just breaks it down a little more through our camps. Our outdoor adventure camp, we take kids out around the valley, plus we go rafting, Bogus Basin. It's a very cool camp, super popular. We take them out in our van. And then our sports camp that just runs here over at Heroes and Chateau. And then that's just a half-day camp that kids can come, and we just offer different sports, very basic level kind of sports, just kind of the introduction to it, and then games. So it's definitely a fun environment. It's not competitive at all. And then you can see as our Camp Merida Moo, again, at the 3 different schools. So currently we are running camp right now, which is great. I'm super happy that we're running during this time. Instead of running at 3 different schools, we are just currently running at Discovery and at Sienna. We've lowered our numbers actually to 40, just to keep within ratio of what CDC recommends with smaller group numbers. So right now, what a day-to-day kind of looks like: our staff takes their temperatures every day. They also take our kids' temperatures every day. And we kind of do a no contact. They stand there with their masks on, and parents are there just supervising. Unfortunately, we can't go on field trips just because we are unable to physically distance within a bus. Same with going to parks or home court. So what we've been doing is bringing camps, guest speakers into the camp, which has been wonderful. We've had Corbin Maxey come out, the fire department, the police canine. So instead of going out, which I know some of the kids were super bummed about, we've been happy to bring stuff back into camp. And I think the kids are just honestly really happy to be out of the house with their friends, seeing other people. So it's just kind of been really wonderful to go out to camp and see that everyone's just enjoying summer in a normal place as much as they can. So our classes, so like I said, I also oversee all of our classes that we offer. So we offer a variety, everything from preschool classes to dance and tumbling, lacrosse clinics, two different types of fencing and martial arts, fashion sketching. We've had Spanish classes, all incredibly popular classes for youth, and then adult classes. Our ever popular yoga and pickleball, of course, is picking up. Line dancing, photography. We just brought in jazzercise. And then we also do adult day trip classes. So we've gone to McCall Winter Carnival. I have some rafting trips planned for this coming August that I'm hopeful that we can still go on. Starlight Mountain Theater is popular. I've also added in a McCall Lake Cruise this coming fall. So just places to get out around the valley. I think people just like having a driver, which is awesome. I'm incredibly happy to do that and take people up there. And it's just great to get people together. So where do we host these classes? So our current community center, you can see right there. This is where we have a small art room in there, and then we have a larger room where our yoga classes take place. And then again, Home Court Bay 5. So Home Court Bay 5 just got renovated and remodeled. There's a beautiful new floor on there. It's all painted. Jake's done a wonderful job of getting that place up and running, and it looks incredible. So if you haven't been able to see it, I do suggest going out there. That's where all of our tumbling classes are at. Martial arts takes place there, fencing, all that kind of stuff. So it's a great place, and it's huge and wonderful. And I'm incredibly happy that we have both those places to run all of our classes. So this is what our upcoming community center schedule looks like. So this is kind of how I plan everything out. So this will be our fall schedule. So you can see we're busy in the evenings. We obviously have a couple yoga classes that are spread out throughout the afternoons, but our evening times are very busy. And then our art room, you can see that we also get some classes in there. And then home court. Home court is popular. It's a bigger space. They have a little more room to move around. So this thing is really, it gets really full. That Sunday time, our line dancing instructor loves that Sunday time. So it's always popular. And then the morning, we have everything from our preschool to our homeschool classes, and then everything in the evening from, again, line dancing to all of our cheer classes and martial arts. So how do we get the word out? So we create a activity guide 3 times a year. So right now, although we're in summer and we feel like we just released a summer guide, we are in the process of making our fall guide. So I get all the information from our instructors. I send it over to the press, Idaho Press, and they put it all together. And so then we'll release it in mid-August, start taking registrations. Those classes run September through December. Then our winter spring guide, and then our summer guide is our big guide. So that's a little bigger with more classes in there. Our other marketing tools that we use, our city website. Shelly does a great job marketing on our Facebook page. Our instructors also sometimes create flyers that we'll post around the community center home court. And then we do email blasts through our Rec One software, and we capture lots of people through those emails. And then I try and take out all of our guides to the local businesses around here, and the library has been wonderful about getting the word out also. All right, and that is what I have. Any questions or comments?
Thank you so much, Jenna. Do we have any questions from the commission regarding the department classes and camps update? Hearing none, Director Sidaway, do you have any additional comments?
Not really, but just maybe in closing, it looks like Garrett might have a comment too, but I would just say that Jenna's done a fantastic job in responding to these uncertain times. As you might imagine, it's been a bit of a challenge to know exactly how to operate as things change weekly. And we've adapted and responded as stages have progressed, and just really proud of Jenna, and just wanted to say that on the record about how great she's been at working through the various challenges. So thank you, Jenna. With that, I'll maybe ask if Garrett has any comments.
Yeah, Mr. President, I was going to kind of echo the same thing. Jenna's really done an unbelievable job with just everything she has to juggle, from activity guide to classes and things like that. You can typically see her. She's one of the first ones in the office, one of the last ones to leave. It is stressful, I know from experience, working with people's kids, right? So she's done a really good job of getting those protocols set in place. It was stressful. But again, she just did a phenomenal job. So to echo what Steve said, she's great.
Thank you so much, Garrett, Steve, and Jenna. Thank you so much for everything that you do. It is definitely a rewarding, but definitely sometimes difficult. It's a learning opportunity to work with other people's kids. It really is. Having two kids of my own. I definitely admire and appreciate your efforts in doing that and doing it successfully.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, you guys. Let me know if you have any more questions.
Thank you so much. Are there any further questions for Jenna from the commission? Hearing none, thank you so much, Jenna, for joining us. We look forward to having you back soon.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Our next item of business is going to be our Spring Pathways Tour debrief from Kim Warren, our Pathways Project Manager, as well as Director Steve Sidaway. Kim, if you'd like, or Steve, the floor belongs to both of you.
Yeah, we didn't really tell Steve, do you want me to go? So we've got most of the map here. I haven't planned anything in particular other than to just kind of recap. The mayor joined us. We had a great turnout. It was nice to see everybody in person. We had a couple of guests and beautiful weather. So we managed to go, I think Keith charted us at over 6 miles. So it was a pretty decent outing. We looked at some new projects like the potential crossing of the Reidenbach, a connection to Bear Creek Park, places where the pathway was completely gone and is set to be built or connected. So I guess I'm just wondering, I'd like to hear mostly from you. Did this satisfy some curiosities you would have about South Meridian? Did anything occur to you about city, future projects? I'm interested to hear anything you might, any input you might offer. Steve?
Mr. President, in order to do exactly that, what I would propose that I would like to do is just go through individually through the commissioners, and I'd ask 2 questions. One, any takeaways or lessons learned that you think we need to take note of, and second, if there's anything that you would change, process-wise for next year. Obviously, we'll go to a different location, but if you noticed anything that you would change, we're always looking to improve. So number one, were there any? What were your primary takeaways? And number 2, is there anything you would change? So, Mr. President, if I can, maybe I'll just ask you first.
Thank you, Director Steway, and Kim, thank you so much. I truly enjoyed our bike ride, our Pathways Tour this year, similarly to the year before. Obviously, each area of Meridian and each pathway grouping is going to be unique, and each network is going to be unique into itself. One thing that I recognized that and observed that we noticed that we had an actual interaction with some of our neighbors here in Meridian regarding pathways along the tour this year that we typically haven't had in years prior, where they've stopped us and engaged us because we passed through the pathways behind their backyards. There are some small pockets of residents who have the right idea and the right concept of our pathways projects, but sometimes may get confused on some of the details of where these connections lead to each other. But overall, we have a consensus that there is an excitement and a deep interest amongst our community members for the continued growth of our pathways networks, and how they deem them convenient and incredibly important to easy access that doesn't include an automobile. I wouldn't change anything in the process. One thing personally that I would like to explore, I don't know at what level or capacity we can explore this, but I'm sure every bicyclist in our valley and throughout the state would love to see a future without goat heads. And while we were fortunate enough not to encounter any on our Pathways tour, it was always, in the back of our minds, what's going to happen if we get a goat head in our tire? Where do we go from there? And I'm sure that's something that, as a bicyclist in Meridian, many of our community members would like to see what could be a strategy and at what level of municipal, state, or county government does this invasive species of plant get addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President. At a really high level, I would just say, the battle against goat heads is a constant one. I think for the sections that our staff maintain, they do a good job of keeping on top of them, but there are many, many pathways, including some of the ones we rode on, that are not maintained by the city of Meridian. And those, don't have the same attention from the city that others do. And so it is a struggle, and I don't know what the answer is for a citywide battle, but I certainly support the efforts. Okay, Commissioner Bevan, any lessons learned and or things you would change for next year?
Yeah, Mr. President, one thing I took out of it was how scary it is to cross busy streets, like, Meridian Road, and that's an ongoing challenge, right, to build an interconnected network. Anytime we cross one of the major streets, as adults, even then, I'm like, wow, I wouldn't necessarily want my kids trying to cross Meridian Road there at Victory, right? And so, I don't know what, obviously, the crosswalk, cross signals and that are necessary. And, looking for spots where maybe we can cross roads that aren't major intersections, right? But a lot of times we're handed, we're dealt with what we're dealt with where things are. So, I don't know, just I enjoyed it, thought it was good, and but yeah, that's something because the other ones we've done have all, I don't know. I know last year we crossed 10 Mile, which is kind of the same thing, but yeah, it's just an observation of that's one of the challenges. So.
That was a very wide intersection that we had to cross there. So. And
it's sprinklers going on.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, thank you. Commissioner Bobo, any feedback in terms of lessons learned or things you would change for next year?
As a frequent user of the pathways, I thought of this when we were writing, and also, and on my own time, the need for update maps. And I know we had talked about it, Kim, when we were writing, is I try to plan out my rides before I leave, and then it's frustrating when there's construction or which I know you probably can't have an up-to-date map based on all of the construction projects we've got going on in the city. But when there's a dead end that's not very obvious, when you're looking at the map, I'll look at a map and it's just like a drawing, something similar to what's on our PowerPoint now. And it's actually a dead end, and the pathway doesn't go all the way through, and it's frustrating to have to turn around and then not really knowing where to go after that, and just have to backtrack and find my own way as I go. If we had a better up-to-date maps that were available for the bikers to see, or for the walkers to see which pathways go through and which ones don't.
Mr. President?
Yes, Kim, go ahead.
Yes, and Commissioner Bobo, I agree. And I know that we do work to keep the pathways layer as current as possible. I know we've talked about getting that information to Google Maps, which I think might help. And I also think we maybe do, and Steve, I'm just throwing this out without any prior discussion with you, but we maybe do for some kind of a printed map like we did several years ago, pre me taking this position, that might be more update in terms of what we have now. So I think that's a really legitimate suggestion. And I hope there are ways to integrate that better online, and then maybe have even a carry along depending.
Well, after we had talked about it, I did go home and look. The map that I had been using was not the best map to be using, and you did tell me where to find more of an aerial view map to look. That I don't. It was on the website. I just didn't see it. The one, you know, the one that it shows up when you click on pathways. It's just a drawing, something similar to what we see on the screen now. There's hardly any street names, and so you kind of have to guess what street is what, and flip back and forth with the aerial views. So when you did show me where to go or tell me where to go, I was able to see a better map. It's still not a great alternative, but it works better than what seems the most obvious when you just go to the site and look. So
Mr. President.
I don't know, maybe we can have a better pointer to look to a better map. I'm not sure how. I couldn't tell you how to solve my problem. I'm just telling you my complaint.
Agreed. I think it's, yeah, one map is more useful for navigation and charting a route. And one map is, you know, I kind of bill it as if you need to print it on an 11/17 document, it reads all right. But yeah, it doesn't, you have to know the city pretty well for the map to be very useful. So I think that's a really good suggestion, maybe some clarity in terms of navigating to the route map on the website. And we'll continue to work on that as we go along, both to keep it current and to see what we can do to improve the interactivity of the map.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Jensen, anything you want to share in terms of lessons learned or changes for next year?
I'd like my schedule to be slightly better so I can actually attend next year.
That's right, I forgot.
No, that's okay. I really don't have any feedback.
All right, Commissioner Steele?
Okay, no, I loved the start of it. It was awesome, but I couldn't for all of it. But I think the Pathway Tour is always a fantastic event, and let's us as commissioners see, you know, actually get there and check things out on the pathways and see the problems we have with connections and intersections and roads and stuff like that. So I think it's a great event, and it should continue to stay an event.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Steele. Commissioner West, anything you would like to add?
Well, you know, I love the project or the Pathways Tour, but one of the things I think caught us more with this tour than previous were just like the itty bitty drop-offs where you're so close, but yet you leave like the pathway to get to this, like the Meridian Road one, where we all kind of were like, do we pick up our bikes? Do we try to ride over the 7 feet in the goat head area? It's like we were so close. And I think on some of our maps, we don't really see it because it looks pretty connected. It's because it's such a small gap. And so I don't know if we're losing, you know, that visibility sometimes when we're looking from a high level, because I realize Kim does a great job of identifying those big gaps, like areas where a lot of focus needs to be made because there is a huge disconnect. And I think she also captures the small disconnects, but I don't know if over time we just don't really have as well visibility into that because they'll be so close that it kind of does look like it's basically connected. But then when we're on the pathway deciding how we're going to get that,
otherwise.
That yes, like the 10 feet or the, you know, just the smaller gaps that seems like, I don't know why we can't have those connected. I'm sure there is a reason. I think we had another one at Stoddard where it was like a waterway or something, but they're just smaller, tiny gaps that are a problem because you can't really make it from one place to another without leaving a paved pathway. So, and I just saw that,
Totally
I
agree.
thought we ran into that more with this area versus past pathway tours where we had, you know, bigger gaps.
Yes, where we needed a van.
Yes.
President, if I could respond to that, and just in general, I feel like a lot of these comments are really hitting on, you know, some of the challenges for our system. You know, the big intersections that feel intimidating to cross, but they're really the safest place to cross. Or to Commissioner West's comment, yes, in fact, I used that as an example when I presented to council a couple of weeks ago, just that you almost feel like you come up to the edge and it surprises you. It's a big system. We may not be really contiguous yet, but there is a lot of pathway. And I know that it does make a difference to get out on it. And a lot of it I have been out on, but I'm not. You know, I don't think anyone could be, you know, all the time. It does occur to me that I get calls periodically, and they're more in North Meridian than South Meridian. But people who say, well, I run this pathway, or I do this route, and sometimes they will have suggestions and say, you know, point out exactly these kinds of things. And so I've wondered if there's any role for some of those people. I keep their names and numbers, you know, in terms of just citizen volunteers who might report in, or maybe there's a way to tap people to help identify some of those gaps. I'm not quite sure how we would harness that, but yeah, it's feet on the ground. I think that's going to see some of those. And with the Meridian Road example, now that it's identified and on the list, I think we, you know, we could make that happen. At least aim for it. I don't think it's impossible. I think it is. It's just hard to comprehensively be on top of such a big area.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, but the point's well taken, and I think we all agree.
Oh, it is, yeah.
All right, thank you, Commissioner West. Councilman Hoagland, any comments you want to add in as our liaison?
Get myself unmuted here. My comments would mirror Commissioner West. I found that those disconnects, they are very small, but they really create a situation that creates a conundrum. Which way do I go? How do I go? The one that really stood out to me was we're coming down Victory Road, and there's that one house with that frontage, and you have to actually go out onto the road and then to come around to the path and then head southeast again. But those little missed connections are, you know, just as important as some of our big segments that we want to get completed, that really make it a full, complete pathway system. We'll have to pay attention to those, and there's a lot of them. I was surprised there was more than I thought there'd be, but that's the system. I mean, we're getting there little by little, so we'll just keep hammering away. But I really appreciate Kim putting this together, and you, Steve, and it's very helpful to be out there and actually see it and experience it, and not be able to walk for 2 days afterwards.
Thank you. Well, Mr. President, that does it for the debrief that I had, and we appreciate the feedback. We'll capture those in our meeting minutes and look forward to the next Pathways Tour.
Thank you so much, Director Sidaway. So do all of us. And Kim, I'm hoping for a 7.5 bike ride this time. We made it 6 3/4. Let's make it 7.5 next time.
Noted. Goals.
Wonderful. We do not have any workshops this month. Let's move on to staff reports. I will hand the floor back to Director Sidaway for staff reports.
You know, I have very little additional to add. I have already touched on the COVID-19 response, the reopening plan that continues to be on the forefront of our activities and challenges, and just making sure we are responding accordingly. Just so you know, we are managing all of our reservations currently under the current Central District Health Order. to where all reserved uses that are greater than 50 have been canceled. Of course, there are, first come, first serve uses that are going to happen in the parks that we don't control, but we are actively managing all the reservations, the people entering and exiting at the home court, the size of our gatherings for sports, for example, have gone to one game at one field per park so that we don't have a gathering greater than 50. So we continue to monitor that situation and respond accordingly, and that's all I have, and I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Director Sidaway. Do we have any questions for the department staff?
I think Mike is online.
Oh, yes. Oh, go ahead.
Thank you.
Mike, yes, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President, Commission. Just wanted to give you a brief update on a few things that are going on in my world. If you remember, the Heroes Park parking remodel continues to push forward full steam. We're getting an updated opinion of cost, and we'll be submitting for a certificate of zoning compliance, provided there's no updates to the plan that need to be made once those costs come in. We're getting ready to, if everything goes well, during the budget process and we get funded and the continued partnership with PAL goes forward, then we'll be putting that project out to bid middle of November, December, kind of hit that sweet spot in bidding. So that's what's going on with that. The other thing that we've been working on is putting together a life cycle replacement plan for all the things in our parks. We're really fortunate that what we have is new or new-ish. Really the oldest, I think the oldest playground we have is maybe approaching 20 years, which in the realm of parks, 75% of what we have is in the last 5 to 10 years. So there isn't a lot out there, but there's some really critical things that are going to need attention in the next 1 to 5 years and then 5 to 10 years. And we want to make sure and capture those and get those budgeted properly so the parks continue to stay in a state of good repair, and it just puts our best foot forward and keeping things up to date and fixed. The other thing is the outdoor gym at Kleiner. That is that project that was selected as part of the mayor's senior advisory board. We've ordered the fitness equipment, and that has come in. It's over at our maintenance shop right now, and working with ESI to get the concrete installed. ESI, if you remember, is donating the entire cost of the concrete, and then just getting a recognition plaque put together, and bringing all those parts and pieces in. So we were a little concerned with the lead time on the equipment, but that showed up quick, and now it's just a matter of getting the concrete folks in there and then bolting it down. And the other thing that I've been working on and focusing on and really made it a priority is to support some of the staff in our department. We have a new forester, Matt Perkins, that should come and talk to you here one of these meetings soon, and making sure that he's fully trained and just supporting whatever the pathway needs are or parks maintenance needs are. And it's been good to focus on some of that and help staff with to keep that forward momentum. And it's actually been really fun. So I think with that, I will sit for questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mike. Do we have any questions for Mike regarding his staff update? Hearing none. Garrett, the floor is yours.
Mr. President, thank you much. With me, I've been doing lots of stuff around COVID-19, believe it or not. A lot of stuff with field reservations and just working with all the youth and adult groups, putting out protocols, keeping things under 50 the best we can. External events like TUPs, temporary use permits. Been working with a lot of the event organizers, postponing, rescheduling to next year, working with them to do whatever we can to keep their event alive, but under 50 per the order, which means a lot of events have been canceled or postponed. With that, a lot of shelter reservations have been canceled or postponed or pushed back, and I got to give Jeanette and Vicki all the credit on that. They have been running reports, making phone calls, talking to people, and their customer service in doing that has just been phenomenal. You know, people generally do understand when they have it, and they're appreciative that we actually are reaching out to them and trying to find ways to make it work as long as they stay under 50. Moving on to our coordinators, events. Like Steve mentioned earlier, events have been postponed until we go back into like a stage 4 scenario. Doesn't mean Renee hasn't been doing much. She's actually been staying somewhat busy and communicating with sponsors and the partnerships that we have with our events. She's still keeping in contact with them and talking to them and kind of giving them as much information as possible. And not only that, she's just been a team player. I mentioned that Jenna has a lot on her plate right now in juggling the activity guide as well as the camps and COVID-19 protocols, and Renee has really stepped up and helped with that the best that she could. She's also looking at all of our AEDs in our parks right now to make sure they're all up to date, changing out the pads for them, making sure they're all current, just making sure that just doing their annual checks, which does take some time. You guys already heard from classes and camps. Like I said, Jenna's just so good at what she does, and she's just super busy with activity guide and camps at Sienna and Discovery. Sports, Steve kind of mentioned that before, what our protocols are with that, using one facility at one park at each time to keep our numbers at 50 or below, limiting spectators or asking people to limit spectators and all those types of things. Maggie's currently in softball and volleyball leagues that are going. They're looking at ways to continue to do stuff through the fall and winter and keeping numbers low. Skylar's cornhole league has been a very good success. Jeremy Aldridge in our Parks Department made the cornhole boards himself, and they are just awesome. If you guys get the chance to look out there at Settlers Park in the afternoon, in the evenings, after 6:30 is when they first start the first games out there. He's got those cornhole boards on Tuesdays and Wednesdays and running the league. So much success. Everybody's requested that they run another league here in the fall. So he's going to do that, and registration for that just opened this afternoon. On top of that, he's got a spike ball league. Started that. The league's a little bit smaller, but it got enough teams to run the league, so he's doing that as well. Ultimately, they're really trying to be creative on keeping their group sizes small, protocols in place, and just kind of focusing on that. Arts and culture, Audrey, she's just really busy with just the art projects, the traffic box wraps, and working with the Historic Preservation Commission on different photos of different things, tours, all that kind of stuff with arts and culture. So she's doing a really good job as well. Last but not least is home court. The curtains have all been replaced. We're still looking at ways to limit numbers over there as well to keep the facility going. Scheduling the facilities really with Jake Garrow's priority is right now, not only for right now, but in the fall. And we're going to be in the fall. And if any of you guys have a crystal ball that's working, let us know, and that way we can help plan. But otherwise, that's what's going on in the recreational world. We'd think we'd slow down a little bit, but we've really been pretty busy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Garrett. Do we have any questions from the commission for Garrett or for any other member of the Parks and Recs staff regarding their staff reports?
So, Mr. President?
Commissioner West.
So Garrett, with the reservations and the shelters, like in between reservations, there's always been that block, like on Saturday and Sundays for the first reservation to kind of clean up or for park staff to assist if they needed to. Are there now added, steps where we're sanitizing tables or anything like that in between the reservations?
Commissioner West and Mr. President, to answer that question, I think Mike or Steve may have a better answer for this. But yeah, we're cleaning structures and restrooms and stuff like that the best we can. And our restrooms are still being cleaned twice a day, I believe. In between the shelters, that time period has always been there historically, just so we can go through and clean up the shelters, spray them down, wash them out, do what we can to help sanitize those in that 2-hour block. As you know, there's several shelters that we have to hit. So in our neighborhood parks, our shelters only have the noon to 9 time block, so they can go and clean those before and after. But that's the first thing I know a lot of our park staff do out at Kleiner is they first, right when they get there in the morning, they jump out there and clean those shelters from the previous night's use for that first reservation at 9 o'clock, and then they do it again. So I know they are getting sprayed down and washed down per reservations. If that helps answer your question, I don't know if Steve or Mike has anything to add to that, but that's kind of where we're at.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to add that just to give you an idea of, I mean, so the park staff cleans prior to a reservation and then in between a reservation. So it is relatively sanitary for a park. But there was a point in time last week, I asked the front desk how many reservations we have on the books total. We had 4. So there may be a fair number of first come, first serve people, but honestly, the groups and birthday parties and potlucks are down to almost nothing.
Okay. All right. I was just curious on that, if we had to increase what we're using or how frequently we're cleaning them. But it sounds like that hasn't been necessary.
No, it's been, I mean, I think if we had a lot of back-to-backs, and they do a really good job after a party leaves to clean up and sanitize stuff. But yeah, hasn't really been an issue.
All right, thank you.
And just note that on a related note, we have increased our cleanings in the restrooms from once a day to twice a day for those similar reasons. So,
with the exception of the masks, Mike, I think you and I, as the top 2 germaphobes in this commission, we were the ones I think ready for this.
Yeah, yeah. Sure.
So, Mr. President, Kim's last on the staff reports. I didn't know if she had anything to add. We kind of went through her stuff a little bit already, but she may have some final comments.
Absolutely. Kim, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President. There is quite a bit going on with pathways, and I will give a nod to Mike, who is really good at just little triggers, little pushes here and there, or I guess the highlight of this week and last was that we got our Fairview Avenue project plans approved for construction by ACHD. This is the connection on Fairview between the 5 Mile Creek and Lakes Place. It's where the 5 Mile pathway just really kind of gets lost on Fairview. So we are adding a wide sidewalk. Plans are done. Bid request has been sent, and I did get an update today. And again, nod to Mike that Idaho Power is getting paid, and they're going to get started moving 5 or 6 power poles out of the way, which is a fairly major line item, and one we have to do before we can do anything else. So funding in order, and that project is getting started. And again, I think it's going to be, it's going to be really key in terms of continuity. James Court is still under construction. We did a couple of really beautiful segments of that project. And the contractor was going to start up in earnest again after the holiday. I haven't made it out there yet, but it's on my list this week. What's in looks really great. We won't go too long. We did meet on we have our local rail with trail project west of City Hall, and it's expanded from a half mile to a mile kind of goal. We need to move forward on possibly acquiring some easements, and that'll require a bit of an expenditure. So that's got us looking back at some some past, some history on the project and what we've invested. And so we have plans to talk to council, get another kind of vote of confidence to keep going on that. I think we have a good shot of making it from Meridian Road out to Linder. But with the new administration and with some of the new developments, we would like to just get in front of council again and possibly update you all as well and just get some direction. We've been working on a conditioned pedestrian bridge that was part of the 12 Oaks project at Franklin and Linder, just on the southeast across the 10 Mile Creek, working out how to accept the bridge, do we have access to and from, and we did just this week get a signed easement for the outflow of this bridge into the Whitestone neighborhood. So all we have left to do now is accept the bridge structure, provided council is willing, and that'll be a new connection. It's come about, it's been a fair amount of work, but it's come about fairly quickly if we can make that happen. 10 Mile Trailhead, there's been a little bit of action on that, and I'm reminded of the discussion about the community center Union 93 project, how sometimes there are moving parts and variables and you have to know one thing before you can get going on the other. The trailhead at 10 Mile was a project that we kind of had to split into two pieces so that we could do parking lot with the 10 Mile road widening and the rest of the site design as a separate project. So when we finally completed the design and submitted to community development, it took just a little bit of redesign to satisfy the fire marshal. So we have a few changes to that site that the civil engineer is going to be working on next week. But I think the high point, if there is one, is that with a little bit of design massage and readjustment, I think it's a better plan. So that was kind of exciting for a few days, and I think we've resolved it. And plenty more going on, but I think at this point I will stand for any questions. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Kim. Do we have any questions from the commission for Kim on her staff report? Hearing none. Do we have any further questions for the collective department staff on their staff reports?
Mr. President?
Yes, Commissioner Steele.
Quick question as far as, or more of a comment, something we need to think about, is we are heavily reliant upon development for our pathways. And it's something that we have to really look at as far as budgeting and having the budget to fill in these pieces and parts of pathways. So for the city to get these done, we're really going to have to step up the budget. I've talked to a lot of city council members and stuff about that. I think the support is there, and it's always a very high priority on everybody's list as far as these pathways. So if we ever want to do that infill and get that done, we've got to step up our budget on pathways. And that's it.
Mr. President?
Yes, Kim.
And Commissioner Steele, one thing that came out of my presentation to council, and it may have been Commissioner Hoagland that brought this up, was kind of a question: how do we jump on these opportunities when we see that there's a need, or if an opportunity comes up? And we did have the discussion with council that we may be asking for money outside of the budget cycle. So, we have this list of 12 pathways we've requested, 12 pathway segments we've requested budget for. But if something comes up, then we may make a pitch to reallocate some of those funds or to take advantage of these projects. So that was kind of exciting, just the understanding that this might be a case where we need to be just a little bit more flexible. But I agree that we want to put as many resources behind this as we can. I think it's a great comment.
And Mr. President, maybe one last comment, just to underscore Commissioner Steele's point about there being support for the increased funding. I believe that the council is stepping up. Last week was the budget workshops, and the council did set their budget for FY21 to be published with all 12 of the potential pathway segment projects to move forward into concept design and easement negotiations and things like that, as well as the construction project along the South Slough near Locust Grove and Ustick to move forward to construction. All told, over $600,000, which is a lot more than we typically get in a year to go towards pathways. So very grateful for that, and I think the council is showing their support and in responding to the demand for pathways and wanting to see them move forward in a significant way.
Wonderful. Kim, Director Sidaway, thank you so much both for your update on that. And Commissioner Steele, thank you so much for your question on that important item. With no further business on the agenda, unless there are any other items, before I ask for a motion to adjourn, I just want to remind everybody that July is Parks and Recreation Month. So it's an opportunity for all of us to share with our community through whatever means possible what the
Mr. President,
yeah.
you're cutting out.
Oh, can you hear me?
Just to talk straight into it, even though it seems loud.
Okay, is that a little bit better?
Yes.
Wonderful. I was just mentioning before we adjourn, July is Parks and Recreation Month. So emphasizing and sharing with our community the importance and the excitement and why Parks and Recreation, what makes Parks and Recreation here in Meridian a premier resources and premier opportunities is something that we can all look forward to sharing with our community members. With that, I'd like to see if there is a motion for adjournment for tonight's meeting. It is about 6 minutes till 7:30.
So, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
A motion has been made. Is there a second?
Mr. President, I second the motion.
Seconded by Commissioner Bevan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. The Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission July meeting has been adjourned.